There we are. Sorry for the hour delay, guys. I hope others weren't thrown off too much. Uh, anyway, welcome, creatives, community, kind folks out there, and of course, classmates and collegiates as well. Thank you for being part of the RPG with DBJ channel. Thank you. Now, what are we talking about today? Well, this today and the rest of this week, we are going to talk about aberrants. Yes, the strange, uh, beautifully evil things. Yeah, it looks a little bit different. As a matter of fact, something very aberrant has happened here at the channel as well. Especially the image behind me. My computer happens to be inside of my closet, and what you see behind me is my it's like the relaxing room, entertainment room. I'm found here like 80% of the time, whatnot. But aberrants, what are they? Especially when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons. Well, we all know, you know, your classic mind flayer. Maybe we want to throw beholders in there or intellect devourers. But I thought we could probably go a little deeper with those creations this week. So, what are they? Well, there's a couple of different definitions, many of them a little bit vague, depending on where you look and what's written. So, for example, if you go to Wikipedia and you look up aberrations as a creature type, they say, you know, aberrations generally all have bizarre anatomies, strange abilities, alien mindsets, or any combination thereof. And there's even a Forgotten Realms wiki that says something similar. Aberrations were creatures from or touched by the far realm, thereby making them utterly alien to the prime material plane, the fundamental planes, the parallel planes, or any other regions of the local cosmology. Aberrations generally all had bizarre anatomies, strange abilities, alien mindsets, or any combination. And then they go on. This is just because it's an older rule set. Most aberrations had dark vision out to 60 feet, but as a group, they had no other special abilities or immunities. And even in the SRD, I believe in the SRD, it says again, aberrations are utterly alien beings. Many of them have innate magical abilities drawn from the creature's alien mind rather than the mystical forces of the world. The quintessential aberrations are aboliths, beholders, mind flayers, and slotty. I haven't heard slotty in a long time. But so I thought we would talk about using aberrations and, of course, your classic mind flayers, how to use them in a game, what purposes we would use them for, and those kind of things. Yeah. Oh, hey, Prue, what's going on? Spelljammer origins, yeah. Always, there's always been this parallel, just because of many of the Cthulhuoid mythos origins, that they either came from the deep oceans or from so far away that we don't understand how far the origins they came from, how far away they came from, and the fact that combining the elements of deep space and not knowing what's out there, as well as not knowing what we have down in our own oceans and the alien physiology. I believe not the salad boys. Slotty. I know. Salads? Really? I don't eat saladies. But just the fact that like squids and octopi and other deep ocean creatures that have anatomies that are strange to us and behaviors that seem somewhat intelligent. There's some weird intelligence behind it, as well as not being able to read their emotions because they don't have a social cues that we can pull off of. I think there's it's why I feel like we feel there's such a relationship to the horror because yeah, Rickard says, so Slotty plus Mind Flayer equals a squid salad. But I don't know. I understand that the epitome of these creatures, the beholder and the mind flayer, kind of sit in this special this special seat of power where they are not related to or devoted to any of these greater gods. They're not they are not part of any kind of biological system. They're not part of the cosmology that we know of. They don't come from any of like the elemental planes. They don't take over any of the outer alignment centralized planes. Yeah, didn't know this was a cookie show. Yeah. Charlie says Slotty are basically the xenomorphs. A great way to get the players into an adventure is to have a red Slotty's slot egg hatch from a bystander. That's I'm glad you brought up xenomorphs because the xenomorphs to me fall into that category where there's a motivation, there's like an intelligence behind them, but we as human beings could never understand them. And I find that to be very fascinating. So let's talk about some of the things that really exemplify aberrant creatures, these Cthulhuid creatures, right? One of them, of course, is the biology. It's the idea that you cut them open, and everything on the inside seems to be kind of what we know of, but it's just all in the wrong place. Their blood is different. Their biological functions are different, meaning, we know mind flayers love to eat the brains of some sentient creatures, right? Beholders don't have legs and they float around and such. Now, granted, I understand there's lots of background material on, I think even in Volo's guide, there's background material on like beholders and where they're from. And most of the time, a lot of that information has the words attached to it, like no one's really certain, but or they have an alien mindset and we're not sure why they do. It's always couched in a manner of not knowing what their behaviors are and why they are performing something, which is perfect for us. It's perfect for us as world builders because we can always create scenarios and situations without necessarily needing to answer them right away. If victims are having their eyes plucked out and the slotty are collecting the eyes and I don't know, using a ritual or throwing them into a vat of acid or whatever you're doing, feeding them to some half brain, half spider creature or something, explaining it, you don't really need to explain it just because it's, they have a purpose. We just don't understand what that purpose is. Kind of like having a pet in the house staring at a shadow in the corner or something and then going crazy. It's like, what are they seeing? I don't know. I don't know what they're seeing. They're seeing something that's far beyond our sight and our comprehension. Also, the idea that they seem to have, there's a lot of horror involved in it, body horror, using elements of things that we yeah, Charlie, like, who knows? This is some crazy bullshit. You're absolutely right. Not only do they have bizarre behaviors, but it's always tinged with, there's always a tinge of turning our stomachs in terms of what they're doing. It's not like crazy and bizarre, like they're, dressing as clowns or something, or I don't know, standing in the middle of the street, juggling bricks or whatever. It's always dark. It's always something that it's not just horror, but it's horrible when we think about it, whether it's the classic chest burster, right? It's something deposited an egg in my throat and now it's about to burst out my chest. It's the it's the human being that's sitting around the table with you, and they're starting to get little stomach pains, and they start to vomit up some pale pale ivory fluid onto the table that's filled with maggots or something, and then all the maggots have the faces of human beings or so. There's always this tinge of body horror to it. Eyeballs, intestines, bloodletting, body parts where they shouldn't be. Um, EBR, hi, thank you for joining us. Yeah, we're talking everything, abominations and aberrants, and yeah. Pelora says, I had some octopus people demanding fingers from the players. The players ended up bringing them a couple of arms from corpses. Yeah. It wasn't really hard, just weird. Well, to me that sounds a little bit horrible, but yes, it is. It's the things that please them, the things they're interested in. We don't know. They tend to have these unblinking eyes and an intelligence behind them that we're unable to comprehend. So, yeah. Charlie says, obviously, a mind flayer is an even more horrifying version of a vampire. And so much about that. And so, okay, let's start from uh, the beginning of sorts, right? Let's start from some of their origins. With aberrants, we know that they come from either the deep sea or far off plains, or a combination of the two, or maybe they're just comfortable down in our deep oceans, a place where to this day we still don't know what's down below certain levels, right? And they're still uncovering animals and creatures there that we really don't understand how they're able to survive and what their biological functions represent. So if we wanted to incorporate them, we have to start off smaller. Yeah, James Lundell says mind flayer equals Borg. Absolutely, if you want to go in that direction. Some people think of the mind flayer as like a solitary creature, having its own purposes. Others feel like the mind flayer is part of the hive brain, that they are both devoted to and linked to, and the external arms of the living brain that they feed. And what are they feeding it? And I think here with a lot of these creatures, along with the body horror elements, right? J- Creatures like gibbering mouthers and cloakers and some of these other creatures. I would even put chokers in there, maybe. Some of these creatures that like seem similar enough to us, but there's something wrong. They're flexible. They have too many eyes or mouths on their bodies or something, tentacles coming out of their backs and whatnot. But there's also the idea that these creatures are serving something, and there's a commodity, there's an economy of existing in the world that we are unsure of, meaning they're going after our thoughts or maybe our memories, our emotions, our desires. A Maybe they're harvesting those things in us that they don't have, or trying to assimilate us, the Borg, right? To assimilate us, to turn us into them, or use us as incubators, i.e., going back to the chest burster idea, the vomiting up little tadpoles that may one day become mind flayers at some point, harvesting eggs. I understand in classic Dungeons and Dragons lore that the mind flayers and the beholders have there's no love lost between them. They don't associate. But with us, you can change anything. Beholders could be in servitude to the mind flayers. They could be a version of drones in their employ. They could be there could be a quid pro quo between them, where the beholders are more like advanced soldiers, or like a spy network, or going back to the drone idea, that they arrive in a certain plane of existence to spy on the goings on there and report back to the mind flayers as both spies and intelligence gatherers or something. Now it could be the opposite direction as well, where the mind flayers are really the ones in control as almost like white blood cells of the neurological functions that have been broken off of this great mind, and the mind flayers themselves, being more humanoid, are attempting to serve the greater brain, and these beholders are more or less um, upper level management as possible. And yeah, Pelor says it's very insectoid. Some of this parasitic wasps spring to mind. A field of bloated corpses erupting into a swarm of critters will bring the fear. And of course, we talked before about reskinning, and this is kind of why I thought we could talk about aberrants this week, because to a certain extent, we would be afraid, using the current statistics right in the game, of throwing mind flayers at first, second, third level groups of characters. But we do have ourselves a number of monsters. We've got our monster manual, we've got our SRDs, we've got Volo's Guide, Tome of Beasts, and any number of third-party things you can just type online. Go to any wiki pages or things like that, and you're going to find a number of creatures. But maybe we're missing some of our aberrants. Well, of course, one thing we can do is look at our books and just change the creature type to aberrant, and then start to describe them in a different manner. Take what we already have and describe it in a different manner. Do they have smooth, oily skin that's blackened? Are there tentacles somewhere? You got to have tentacles, or strange body parts thereof. Are they humanoid in nature with a single eyeball in their forehead, or is their face covered with multiple sizes of eyeballs, and we're unable to find out where they chew their food, and come to find out that down where their belly button should be is a maw with teeth or something. Any kind of body horror, I believe, by reskinning the creatures that we already have, would be perfectly applicable for many of these creatures. And things like Pelora brings up parasitic wasps. We could, let's say, a sturge. A sturge could be, you take the sturges, those are those like flying bat / waspy things that sting people. Make them into eyeballs that float around, and maybe below them is like a weird snake-like tongue or something, and they also operate as the eyes and ears of these greater creatures as people hide in their homes, when the sun goes down or something. Just reskinning them. Charlie says some fuel for that body horror could be looking up actual characteristics of real world freaky creatures. An octopus can actually inject its stomach acid into its prey to begin digestive juices, just like a spider. Oh, Deadman says they're mosquito bats. Yeah, the sturges are like mosquito bats, and we can reskin low CR creatures, low challenge rating creatures, like sturges or goblins or something of that, of that level, right? And just reskin them. Even like spiders and octopi could be, they themselves could be changed or altered in a manner in which are really appropriate for what we want. As a matter of fact, during our reskin episode, we even talked about origins. What more horrible origin do you need than to find out that these creatures are bursting from the stomachs of innocent people in a village or a town or a major metropolis or something, right? The fact that they're spiders isn't just horrible. The fact that they're coated in stomach acid from having been incubated inside of the internal organs of the innocents adds to the horror of those creatures. James Liddell says starfish dumping their whole stomach of acid to digest. Yeah, something that the idea of digesting something outside of its body, spitting acid on its victims to then eat the small morsels of its body is pretty nasty. I believe that's how flies digest things as well. And to see that writ large is pretty nasty. And those things could lead to further things, right? Um, Beastmaster, you're going back. Beastmaster with John Singer. Wow. Somebody brought up something very old, man. Beastmaster. Wow. Rickard says aboleth plus chul plus mind flayer plus slod, seafood salad, fish, lobster, and octopus. We got all the bases covered. if if you're powerful enough to make a seafood salad out of that, maybe deep fry some of that stuff. Tasty. Yeah. Dead Man says sea fly the movie. Oh man, brundlefly. Oh, vomiting on sandwiches to eat it and slurp up some of the digested stuff. Oh my goodness. And again, not even having to change the statistics, but to just surprise some of the PCs when the old lady that serves pastries in the small town, you end up seeing her bent over a dead victim and she's like spitting out acid and sucking up little bit. Yeah, pretty nasty, especially if the old lady's limbs start to bend and twist in a manner where she starts walking up walls, a la The Grudge and other, the Ring and other movies where you see flexible people are used and their bodies like shifted and twisted and such. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Charlie says, yeah, that happens in The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. Of course. Oh man. Beastmaster. Yeah. I watched Beastmaster so many times as a kid. I loved Beastmaster. Although my favorite was the Rutger Hauer movie, Lady Hawk. That was a great one too. And again, even using some of Legion. You think Legion fits in there? Oh, not. I know. Sorry. I the first thing that came to mind was the movie Legion with the angels and stuff. I was like, what? You mean Legion, the television show, the X-Men Light television show is a big mind fuck. Very much so. Now of course we're talking about aberrance stuff. We cannot avoid insanity. The destruction of our mind, the idea that we're going insane. Prue says cephalopods and squids also have toxic saliva and will start digesting the prey from within. Ooh, nasty stuff there. As a matter of fact, if we really want to go in terms of like reskinning some creatures, we can start to, instead of just giving them like piercing attacks or blunt attacks or whatever, give them like an acid attack or a poison attack or some combination thereof, that when the creature is not only trying to claw you to death, but it's also using acid to try to digest you before you're even dead. Deadman says the movie had people walking up walls and stuff. Oh, in the movie Legion, where the angels are coming to Earth, and they had people, the people walking up walls, all with their bodies twisted and turned into strange forms. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Charlie says a troubled schizophrenic. Body Slurpee. Oh, really, James? Body Slurpees. Tasty. Plur says, ooh, old lady taking over, puking over a corpse and slurping it back up. But their human skin isn't protected from their own acid, and their lips and cheeks are black and peeled back. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can, even before the dice hit the table, right? Even before we're like roll initiative, or we go into our virtual tabletop and we start pulling out statistics and things. It's the idea of setting the scene, setting the idea that describing things and layering things and using narration to describe something in a manner in which the players do not want to be touched by it. They don't want to be near it. It's the idea of Yeah, we can hack at it, but maybe the best idea is just to run away. Prue says this is also a fun area to use hallucinogenics as a weapon. Hallucinogenics, dreamscapes. Um, yes, we could be a little bit insensitive to people in real life who have or are suffering from psychological issues, whether they know it or not. So we might want to be a little bit careful with that when inserting it in the game. That being said, this is for entertainment purposes and not necessarily making judgment calls on real life psychological issues. But given that, we can definitely dive deep into phobias and psychoses and schizophrenia and the side effects of madness, because that's the other thing about Cthulhu creatures. They drive you insane and mad. And what a great way to reskin some of our creatures that do things through, say, mental contact or visual contact. You can take your classic basilisk and Medusa and Catoplebus, Catablibus, whatever that thing is called, that lifts its head out of the swamp and looks at you and kills you. But whatever the case may be, let's reskin the results of that and turn that into madness. That when this sees you, it turns you insane. When the vampire or vampiric creature looks you in the eye, it doesn't just hypnotize you, but it puts you into a nightmarish dreamscape of sorts. Yeah, Charlie says the abomination embedded inside or consumes from within. Yeah, absolutely. Driven to hunger despite the pain. Ooh, I like that. Like drugs with less real life psychological issues. Exactly. And mind you, again, remember, I I I get it. We really do want to be sensitive to people who do have those issues, which is something we should bring up like a session zero kind of thing. But if everyone's okay at the table, the only people you really have to rationalize any of this stuff with are the people that you're playing the game with at your table. The rest of the world doesn't matter. So, however you handle it, uh, whether it's something really bizarre, looking deep into the creature's eyes, you know, each player maybe has to pick their own greatest fears, and those greatest fears come after them. Or it could just be a general, uh, a, a- an ephemeral being driven insane. And of course, we get to use our short-term and long-term and permanent madness tables in our, I believe it's the player's guide or dungeon master's guide. We get to use some of that as well, making a bunch of wisdom saves or intelligence saves or whatever have you in your classic Dungeons and Dragons or any other kind of things. Charlie says rust monsters could be a good creature to reskin. Heck yeah! And as a matter of fact, to be honest, it really doesn't make sense that rust monsters exist anyway, right? They're Gygaxian creatures. They're there to destroy the equipment of the PCs. Hey, they have magic items. No, you don't, right? So, considering that they're already alien, you can change what a rust monster looks like. It doesn't have to be not only does it not have to be this turtle-like creature with a little spinner on his tail, but even if you do keep it that way, you can make it far more insidious, making it pets or putting swarms of these creatures. And um, they, I believe they actually do harm to human beings, despite the fact that they eat rust. So it could be them causing harm to human beings or humanoids to get at the tasty morsels, which are the steel and metals and alloys that they have. Um, yeah, Prue says, but of course, always sensitive to which players are at the table, of course. And then once you're past that point, then it's how deep are we going to go with this? Are we going to describe it really deep, or are we going to fade to black? Right? Dead Man says Eclipse Phase has the gut eater, a parasite that takes over the body and eats whatever you eat. Ooh, parasites are great things to have around, and parasitic creatures are really cool to insert in the game because it's a great way for you to spring on your players something horrible at the most mundane situation possible. people sitting around eating dinner. Oh, everyone having a conversation in the local market, or maybe an innocent person needs a little bit of help. The gentleman in the market whose eyes are bleeding and nose is running and stumbling into people, and everyone's pushing them aside, and all of a sudden the person falls on the ground and their body contorts in the pain, and you see something starting to split their skin and claws start to come out of their body. Yeah, definitely the alien scene in the movie where everyone's sitting down, getting ready to have a eat after they've nuked their soy meals and whatnot, and the person's like, "Oh, I don't feel too good," you know. Um, Charlie says you could really scare a party into thinking it's a trap being sprung. Hell yeah, hell yeah. And maybe there's of course, with these alien-like creatures, you gotta have a Cthulhu cult, right? And who's to say that summoning these elder beings from another world isn't external? Opening up a wormhole or a teleport sphere or whatever the case may be, or sacrificing the dead, or maybe they're sacrificing themselves, and they drink a fluid back with little particles floating in it. And who's to say that they aren't little seeds or little embryos that are going to grow inside of their body, and they surround a whole population as they gather everyone into the town square, and they disrobe, standing there naked. And then, of course, hilarity ensues as their bodies are overcome with something that springs out of their mouths or eyes or something, or acid starts to slowly deteriorate their body as they scream in pain. And at the very last minute, they realize just what it is that they've given their lives towards. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Pelorus says some bloodsuckers use painkillers to avoid detection, so a large creature may use some mind-altering chemical to send the victim to sleep or hallucinate. Yeah, that's kind of why I picked the thumbnail with the person with like the octopus arms or something on their back. Who's to say that some individual doesn't have like an insectoid creature attached to the back of their neck with their long antennae reaching into their ear, or wearing a cloak, and it looks like the cloak is covering a hump on their back, but really it's something else that has been feeding on them on a daily basis. Or maybe something's hiding under their bed or in the closet or in the rafters of their home, and each day they just feel like they have to go back home to once again be fed on with the classic vampire teeth, but something different. Maybe it looks like a lamprey bite, or they've received wounds, on the base of their back or around their genitalia or something of that nature, right? So yes, very much like the classic vampire, right? Some vampire stories have vampires being very brutal and ripping at the throat. Other vampires feed upon people night after night, where the person's using a scarf to cover up the scars because they're thrown into a state of ecstasy, or at least paralysis and whatnot. Pelorus could be physically weak, but an effective hunter given its own tools. And again, there's a huge I like the parallel between vampire and mind flayer. And in your world, vampires don't necessarily have to have an undead origin. They could very much have an aberrant origin. Again, changing the creature type and origin of the creature gives us great tools to think about what they are, how they operate. Are their fingers now, instead of fingers, they have tentacles? Does their mouth unhinge and release some kind of strange secondary lips or tentacles, or insectoid arms reaching out to consume their prey? We can describe things in so many ways. Maybe they're humanoids that are vampiric, and instead have mouths on the palms of their hands that are able to help them feed, as opposed to using the mouth on their face, which might be atrophying or even sewn shut or something. Prue says also gotta love the effects from parasites like T. gondii. Toxoplasma gondii. Deadman pasted that into the chat in the Discord over in Fantasy Grounds. It's pretty nasty. Goes on to say it's an obligate intracellular parasitic one-celled eukaryote that causes the infectious disease toxoplasmosis. Is capable of infecting virtually all warm-blooded animals, but felids such as domestic cats are the only known definitive hosts in which the parasite may undergo sexual reproduction. Even that sounds bad. That sounds now okay. So taking that, imagine your mind flayer like creatures are able to inhabit a domestic or even mundane creature, cats, dogs, cows, birds, whatever the case may be, like an avian flu or something, and they are a symbiotic host in the mundane animals, but become extremely parasitic when exposed to humanity. So they could live in house cats and not cause any damage, reproduce in them to then spread to human beings that where we of course suffer much of the harm. Or they could be transforming those domestic animals into something quite horrible. And every time the PCs go near a village and see a bunch of cows, they might be panicked, right? Oh man. Yeah, Dead Man says most parasites fit the aberration classification quite well, and not only their descriptions, but I think their images too. There's lots of of microscopic images as plenty of video footage of doctors removing parasites from people. One of the worst ones I still think are the worms that I saw a doctor remove from the eyeballs of an awake individual, and I was like, "Oh, that's sick," and I love it so much. And why not have this become the origins of how magic is used by people